All right, guys, I think I've met most of you, but my name is Chad Rogers, and I want to thank Hidden Summit for allowing me to come in here tonight and to share with you all just a little bit. I'm going to give you just a quick introduction kind of on my background that'll kind of help you understand what it is that I'm going to share with you tonight. So I've been a college professor since 2009. I teach things like philosophy, ethics, logic, history, psychology, and a little bit of religion as well. So I'm kind of all across that spectrum of what we call the big questions. And by big questions, what we mean is things like, why am I here? Do I have meaning and do I have purpose? Does the entirety of the human race have some kind of meaning and purpose that they're moving toward? Or is the entire universe just this happenstance that's kind of a lucky accident, right? And there's no meaning and there's no purpose, and here we are, and that's it. And so those are the kinds of questions that I deal with when I'm in my college classrooms, okay? And I began this journey. I started going on this path for kind of a dark reason, and we've had a lot of dark presentations, so it'll be dark for just a minute, and then we'll move on past that, and I promise there's not going to be a lot of darkness after that. I started on this particular journey asking these questions when I was 16 years old because my best friend Matt was twirling a loaded pistol on his finger and it went off and it hit him in the head and it killed him. And so at 16, he was 16 too. Our birthdays are like 2 days apart and he died a few days before our 16th birthday. I was absolutely devastated and I spiraled into this depression and I began thinking about Matt's life and wondering what purpose and what meaning his life could possibly have had because he died so young. And life doesn't even really start until you're, a little bit older. He only had like really 10 years, maybe 8 of life where he was just kind of deciding and picking and choosing, and he never really became what he had the potential to be. And as I was reflecting on Matt's life, I began to reflect on my own life because I was 16 as well, and what meaning and purpose could my life possibly have had at this age as well. And as I started thinking about that, I began to sit in the darkness and, as we say now, stare into the abyss, right? Just searching for something. And I couldn't have told you at the time that what I was looking for was meaning and purpose. I couldn't have told you that because I didn't get those words until a lot later in life, until I started reading about people who had gone through these kinds of things before me, and they had put them into words. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you read somebody and you're like, that's what I've been trying to say right there. And you couldn't put it into words, and then all of a sudden there it wasn't. And you're like, oh my goodness, somebody else has had this experience, and there it is right in front of you for the first time, right? As a 16-year-old, all I could tell you was that I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what it was, I couldn't put it into words, but this shouldn't happen, because at that age, I thought the world worked. And it wasn't until a lot later I found out the world doesn't work. Things are wrong. And those kinds of things are really commonplace. So what happens, just kind of fast forwarding through my story, is that I go off to college. I meet a lot of really, really brilliant professors who, again, I find these kinds of questions and other questions that I didn't know existed from experience that I had never had, but they were starting to share these things with me, and I began to understand more and more and more. And then I went on and I got a master's degree, and as I began to work through a lot of these questions, I found answers for myself. I found personal answers that helped me as I was going on my journey. But what I tell people is that those answers that I found for myself, they probably won't help you. They're personal to me, and everybody's experience on this planet is very, very different. And so, yeah, I could share my answers, but they might not be the answers that you need for your particular experience and for your life. But what's really, really fun and fascinating is that I also found some really, really good questions. And what I found in my 15 years is that these questions are really relevant to almost everybody that I meet. And so tonight what I want to do is I want to tell you a story, and then I'm going to give you a quiz, and the quiz is about you. So the answers come from you. And the story that I want to tell you, and everybody's going to go, oh crap, here we go, right? Philosophy professor, it's about the life and teachings of Socrates, and everybody leaves the room, right? Because when you start talking about these things, what are we got ourselves into? And what I'm going to promise you is nothing technical, right? And Socrates wouldn't have done it that way anyway. So nothing technical, it's just the story of his life and his death and kind of what he stood for, and then I'll ask you a few questions, so it's really, really simple. Now, when I say Socrates, most people see the old guy with a beard, right? Because that's pretty much what we know. And that's understandable. That's kind of what we know from history. But what most people don't know about Socrates is that when he was a younger man, he was a soldier in the army of Athens. He was an Athenian soldier. Now, I'm not going to go through the history of Greece and how all this stuff comes down, but there's 3 cities there that war with each other for like 30 years. It's called the Peloponnesian War, and Socrates fights in these wars. And we know that Socrates was in at least 3 major engagements. And in all of those engagements, he was offered an award for valor in all 3 engagements. One of the awards that he was offered was because the general of his army advanced too far out into the enemy ranks, and he stood over him with his shield and his weapon, and he fended off the enemy soldiers until help could come from his army, and they rescued that commander and brought him back behind the lines. It was said of Socrates that when they lined up in their battle formation, that I'll talk about a little bit more here in just a minute, and then the opposing army would line up on the other side. It was said of Socrates that the army on the other side, that those soldiers would sometimes look across the field. They'd see Socrates was in front of them, and they were going to have to face him in battle, and then they went, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to find another spot, because Socrates was just that ferocious on the battlefield. Now, most people don't really think about it because they know the old man who's the philosopher who, is searching for wisdom and truth and all that. Now, I share that with you to say, first of all, my favorite saying from Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. The unexamined life is not worth living. And what he means is that if you're not examining your life, if you're not trying to figure out why it is that you're doing what you're doing, you will waste your life. And you're going to wake up one day and you're going to wonder what all that time that you wasted was all about. So you need to be understanding why it is that you're doing what you're doing. Now, that can apply to you in your career, that can apply to you in your personal life, in your marriage, that can apply to you even in your fitness life. Why am I doing what I'm doing? What's really important for us to understand really quickly here, it's kind of back to the darkness, is about Socrates' experience in what's called the shield wall. This is the primary formation of the ancient world. And so what you would do in a shield wall, every soldier had a shield on their left hand, and you hold that here in front of you. So on this side of your shield, this is your strong side, because it's, the elbow's connected to the what bone? The shoulder bone, right? So here we go. And so it comes in right here, and so it's solid. But this is your weak side. The weak side comes in, it would bend in. If the enemy hit this side with their weapon, it's going to bend, and that's going to cause a hole in the line. And the most important aspect of a shield wall is that it does not break. And so if you've ever seen the movie 300, and they line up and they get in their turtle shell and everything's awesome and they've got their shield wall locked together, and then they come blowing out and they start chopping off heads and arms, and that's great cinema, and it's absolute crap when it comes to the tactics of the shield wall. No matter what, you do not break the wall. And so in order to prevent this weakness on this side, what you would do is lock it to your neighbor's elbow. And so now your weakness is attached to their strong side, and you would just line up all the way down, and you have this connection. And your job, let me get there first. So what would happen is both sides would line up, they'd lock their shields together. Depending on the terrain and the tactics, the 2 walls would come together, and they would, as they pushed their shields together, they would enter into this kind of push of war, where they're pushing back and forth, and they would have these little bitty weapons on the front line that they would be hacking underneath. They're trying to take the feet of the opposing side out from under them so they can bring that shield wall down. Remember, the primary purpose is to break their wall and your wall to remain. And then a row back, you might have a spear you're jabbing over the top, same tactic, and a little bit further back you might have a longer weapon. But the entire purpose of all of this is to bring that shield wall down. It's to make a hole, right, so that you can get in there and cause that side to lose. Now, what's really important here is that the weapons that were used were butcher's weapons. This was an incredibly bloody and also a very personal, a very intimate way to conduct warfare, because the person who's trying to kill you is right there, and you're trying to kill them back. You would know what that person had eaten for breakfast. More likely, you would know what they drank for breakfast, because you don't want to go into this kind of carnage sober. The weapons that they use are butcher's weapons. Most people know about the gladius, that short sword, right, that we see the gladiators use in the arena. That weapon could literally cleave a man from his shoulders to his hip in a single blow. And those are the weapons that they use on this battlefield. As the battle progresses and men begin to die, we all think about the blood and the guts that are going to be strewn underneath, right where you're at. You're right here. Here's the battle line. You're pushing, you're stepping in the blood and the guts. You're stepping on the dead and the dying as you're trying to break that wall, as you're trying to push through them. What's the last thing you do before you die? Anybody know? As you die, before you die? You avoid your battles. So the battlefield's going to be absolutely strewn with blood and guts and human waste. There's one story of a soldier who fell in battle, not because he was wounded, but simply because he fell. We don't know really why. And when he went down into the mud, to the mire that was there under their feet, he drowned because he could not get up. It's that kind of sticky, tacky morass that would form there. So the battle progresses. One side eventually is going to lose. Whichever side's shield wall breaks, they lose. That side will suffer up to 80% casualties. If you've got an army of 10,000, you're talking about 8,000 men being slaughtered on that side. And the opposing army would only lose like 10 to 15% of its army. That's how important the shield wall is. It must hold. Now, what's really, really important for us here is to understand that those three major engagements that Socrates was in, his side lost. And so what he would have witnessed was all of those soldiers that he had trained with, that he fought with, that he ate with, that he lived with, he would have watched those men being slaughtered. So when you hear something like, the unexamined life is not worth living, and then you begin to understand his experience there on the battlefield, it becomes very obvious that this is not some philosopher who's just sitting back and relaxing and eating grapes, and they're sitting there and they're going, that sounds really smart. I think I'll say that. Yes, the unexamined life is not worth living. When you understand Socrates the soldier, and you understand what it was that he experienced, you begin to understand here's a man who is truly looking for that meaning, that purpose, that value. He wants to be sure in this case, because he's going to have followers, he wants to be sure that his followers are not wasting their life. So, fast forward a little bit in Socrates' life. He's an older man now. He's known to be kind of a teacher. He's known for going around and having really deep conversations with the wise men there in his city, in the city of Athens. And so, as he goes around, what he's doing is he's looking for wisdom. He's looking for knowledge. He's looking for truth, because it was said of him by an oracle, that's a mouthpiece of the gods. It's just said of him by an oracle that Socrates was the wisest of men. And Socrates didn't believe he was the wisest of men. Not only did he not believe that, he didn't believe he had any wisdom at all. And so he set out on a journey to try to prove that he wasn't the wisest of men. So what he did is he went around the city and he found the wise men. If he wanted to know what justice was, he sat down with people like judges and lawyers, and he talked to them about, hey, what is justice? And they had this dialogue. He asked them questions, and they just sat and they talked to each other. If he wanted to know what love was, he went and he talked to the poets and he talked to the songwriters. And those are the people who, that's their area of expertise. And so he would ask them what love is, and he would have these conversations. And in all these conversations with all these experts, Socrates always found that there was some kind of problem. There was some kind of issue, either at the level of definition, how they defined justice, or how they applied it. There was always some kind of contradiction within what they were saying. And so what he did is he would leave those conversations, and he would understand that those men weren't they weren't wise. They didn't have wisdom because they didn't know what they were supposed to know. They were supposed to know what justice was, but there was always conflict. There was always some kind of discrepancy. And so eventually what Socrates decided is that he is the wisest of men. Not because he has any wisdom, but because he knows one thing. He knows that he has no wisdom. These other men think that they're wise. They think they have wisdom, and they don't. And Socrates says, I'm wiser than them because I know I don't have any wisdom. That's the only reason I'm wiser. Socrates was so good at plaguing these men in Athens that they brought charges against him. Because they could not beat him in a conversation, they were made to look stupid. And since they were being embarrassed by him, they brought charges against him to try to get rid of him. Remember, Socrates has got followers. And if you're familiar with something like, Jesus and his followers, it's exactly the same thing. That's a normal pattern in the ancient world. You're a wise teacher, people follow you. So all these young men are following Socrates, and when they hear him embarrassing all of these really supposed to be wise, very powerful, very influential men, eventually those charges are brought against him. They're brought against him. Socrates is found guilty. And in the ancient world, the charges that he was charged with, not going to go through it, those charges that was attached to the death penalty. Now, the entire city of Athens knew that Socrates was innocent, but he was found guilty and he was going to have to be executed in 30 days. Now, he's got 30 days to get his affairs together. He's under house arrest, and under house arrest just means that anybody else can leave the house or go into the house any time of day, but there's a guard outside and Socrates can't leave. Now, he's a war hero, and the entire city knows that the charges against him are false, that he just embarrassed these really powerful men. And they knew that if he just walked out the door, the guards would look the other way. He could leave the city, save his life, and come back when this had kind of blown over. His disciples went to him and they pleaded with him to leave. And he refused. He refused. And he stayed. And the reason that he stayed was that he said, if I left now, I could be found guilty, but I'm going to stay because I'm innocent and I will protect my integrity. And he stayed and he drank the hemlock poison and he died. Now, I look at my audience, I've got students, sometimes I do this in other formats as well. Now we're going to have a little audience participation. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Let me get through them both and then you can answer them, right? So let me get through 2 of them first, okay? So number 1, what is so valuable to you that you would literally stand in a shield wall and fight and maybe die in order to protect it? That's the first one. Number 2, what's so valuable to you, what's so important to you, that you would literally drink poison in order to protect or preserve it? Okay, so now it's open. So what's so important to you that you would literally fight, kill, die, or drink poison in order to protect it? Family. Family? Okay, what else?
Faith.
She says faith, right? And that can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people, right? So whatever that means for you. Faith. What else? Sobriety. Okay. All right. What else? Your health. Now, I've always kind of got to back up here just real quickly and remind people, and I don't know if I have to remind you or not, but I want to remind everybody, right? You just happen to be the one. Are you willing to kill someone for it? Okay. Now, right? No. They're trying to prevent you from pursuing that health, right? Okay. All right. It's one of those things, guys. It's easy for us to understand. It's easy for us to understand. I want to preserve my own life. That's easy. Sometimes it's hard for us to understand. I want to do that at the expense of taking someone else's life. That's a very different step. And you have to be real careful and consider just what it is, that it's valuable enough that I'm going to take that human's life as well. Because there's a lot of consequences that come with taking that person's life. Okay. So we've got family, we've got faith, we had health, sobriety. What else? What else?
My top 3 that I was talking about yesterday with my family, loved ones, my health as well. Like, and I say it in a way that I know what it's like to be on the other side, and I'd rather kill myself than go back to where I was. So I would kill to stay where I am, then I would rather die than go back to where I was. And then this vision and this business, right, to help people. Like there's an effort to share the message, share the mission, and give someone a chance to make a decision, like that is worth fighting for, dying for.
Absolutely.
I've lost people, and I've almost lost myself because of it. So.
Yes. Right.
I don't, it's sure now it's Hidden Summit, whatever the name is, 20 years from now, like that message is worth fighting for. So.
Right. So So, I mean, I haven't worked for Hidden Summit. My wife has, which means that I get to kind of be a ghost listening to some of the calls, right? So we're walking the dog, and I'm hearing, the Hidden Summit folk talk. Sometimes it was coaches, and so it was kind of inside. And so I think what I'm hearing here is, and this is something I really love about and appreciate with Hidden Summit's attitude, and that's why I think you guys are here. It's not about the business. Now, he used the word business, but what he went on to talk about wasn't business, it was people. And Hidden Summit cares about people. And so what he's willing to fight, potentially kill for, is to protect other people who are trying to have that better life, that life that maybe, that they're after, that they're seeking. I think that's what I heard. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'll open up about it a little bit more right
Sure.
now. There's people in this room that probably know about it, others that don't. I had to make one of the most difficult decisions of my life in giving the team a certain amount of time to go in a direction on their own because of a number of different reasons. One, the business wasn't growing the way it had been growing, and there are certain things that were outside of my control. And two, the idea it was that we were shifting away from what the original intention of the business was. So I literally had to burn the boats and kill what we were doing
Right.
to move back down the original path of helping people the way we wanted to help people. And it was really hard because as a leader, right, for clients and staff, like there are people that look to me to learn. There are people who look to me to receive a paycheck. But when we're moving in a direction and the results aren't getting there and people aren't being helped and their money isn't coming in, like I have to, like you said, fight for what it is the vision is intentional, like originally.
Right.
And like it killed me to have those conversations. However, like I know in my gut and in my heart and my soul that this is the reason that I'm here today, alive, not just in this room, is because I'm on this earth to be able to help people with this intentional vision of growth and becoming the best version of yourself. Mindset, nutrition, movement, lifestyle, however you want to phrase it. It can be said 1,000 different ways, but like the truth is that it's really fucking hard to do this. And sometimes you have to, like you said, I would, it's either like this happens now or this doesn't fucking exist and it's
Right.
dead. And I did mean that like hit me really hard when you said that.
Right.
So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to bring up the Jesus Christ Socrates comparison because I took a whole entire semester on that, and it is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So back to the question, so we can get any more input, any more answers. Right? What's so valuable to you? What's so important to you that you would literally fight, kill, die, drink poison in order to protect or preserve it? Any other answers? We've got family, faith, sobriety, helping people. Is that adequate for a quick phrase, I guess? Did I miss something? I feel like I missed something. Is that it? Okay, anything else? Who said freedom? Excellent. Yeah, freedom. Anything else? Not a safe space, you're not going to say it. Okay, good. All right. All right, guys, so when I ask this question, and I've asked this to a lot of people in a lot of different situations at a lot of different ages, the absolute three top answers that I get almost every single time. Number one's family. Like without fail, I've gotten that, right? Family. Number two is freedom. That's the second most popular. Third is faith. Those three. And they all happen to start with F, and that's really handy. So it's family, faith, and freedom. Those are the three that I get nearly every single time. The most I've ever had anybody give me, like one person name on their list, was 5, was the biggest number. Nobody else has come close. Everybody's list is small. Everybody's list is really, really small. It's never a large list. And so what's important for us as we're going through this and we're starting to try to understand this is that I call these your primary purposes. These are the most important things in your life. Whatever your list might be, right? This is just the question. You answer it. I call them primary purposes. This is the most important things that you do, your primary purposes. Everything that you do should be focused somehow into achieving these kinds of things. Now, what's really significant here is that I have never gotten answers like, I would fight, kill, die, and drink poison for something like my right to watch cat videos on YouTube. Do people still watch cat videos on YouTube? I don't know. Okay, somebody does. All right. Or to scroll on TikTok, or to scroll on Facebook, or to control the remote control so I know what's on TV. Nobody has ever said that to me. So my question to them is, then why are you spending so much time on those things? What you told me was your primary purposes are things like family, faith, and freedom. Why are you spending so much time on things that are not primary to you? They might be a waste. If you don't examine your life, you risk wasting your life. Why are you spending so much time on things that do not matter to you? Guys, you've got 3 what I call non-renewable resources. First one is time. You've only got so much time in your life, and you don't know how much you get. Brain aneurysms. I'm getting on a plane tomorrow. All right. I'm also driving tomorrow. Maybe that's a risk. I don't know. You don't know how much time you've got. You need to use it on the things that are valuable to you so that you don't waste it. The second thing is money. Now, everybody says, I can make more money. Yeah, that's true, you can, but you're only going to make so much money in your lifetime. And if you go back and read some of the histories of these folks who made millions and billions of dollars and ended up dying as paupers, right? You've only got so much money that you're going to make in your life, and you need to be using it to invest in the things that are valuable to you, or you're going to waste your life. The third thing is energy. You've only got so much energy in a day. And if you've ever walked into your house, and we were talking about this slightly earlier, you walk into your house and your significant other or friend or whatever it is wants to have some kind of meaningful conversation with you, and you look at them and you say, I just don't have the energy for this. You've only got so much energy. And so you need to be using your time, your money, and your energy on things that are actually valuable to you, or you're going to end up wasting your life. All right, so we're not going to have, an altar call, come to Jesus moment, none of that stuff. But what I'm asking you to do is to simply reflect there, kind of on Socrates and his life. What it was that he stood for, the things that he died for, figure out the things that you want to stand for, the things that you're willing to fight, kill, and die for yourself, and then begin to invest your resources in those things. This is what we in philosophy talk about as mindset of, this is what I want, and so I'm dedicating my resources towards those things.